Welcome everybody to my video conference. First, I want to start sharing with you the topic that we are going to be developing throughout this video, and that is obstacles that make the process of learning English difficult or even impossible. Now, I want you to take a look at this picture that we have on this slide and think about your personal experience learning English. And I want to ask these two questions. Did you feel comfortable to give your opinion at the beginning when you were learning English? Or were you able to express your ideas without hesitation? You were not able, right? Because some of these aspects. Pronunciation. Sometimes learners feel afraid because probably the words that they are going to say, are not pronounced correctly. And that's why sometimes they don't participate in class. And even though they do not know the right pronunciation of the words, they don't ask for help and they prefer to stay or in silence. That's why they don't participate in class. People laughing. Sometimes learners think before they start saying something. My classmates are going to laugh about what I say, or even the teacher. That's why they don't say the things they want to say to the class. Then we have the negative evaluation that in this case it is from the teacher. And it's not that the teacher is so mean at the time of evaluating, but the learners think that probably the teacher is going to say something negative about their participations. So that's why they don't say anything. And students do not have a good performance or do not uh, have a good learning process because they are afraid of tests and they prefer not to have tests, or they are afraid when doing tests. In this case, I will mention some internal and external factors that affect the language learning process. And I will share with you an infographic where these internal and external factors are explained so you can understand them better. Internal factors, we have the motivation, intelligence, anxiety, personality types, and attitude. All those internal factors can interfere the learner in his learning process. The external factors that can affect the learner's learning process are social class, first language, teachers, classmate, and context. All these factors can have a positive or a negative influence in the learning of a language. So let's see the infographic in order to understand how these factors influence the learners. In this video, I will focus on internal factors that are the emotional factors. The emotional factors considered as obstacles. So we will be talking about emotional factors that interfere the language learning process. And sometimes it is said that the cognitive skills are the most influential factors when learning a language. And that sounds logical, since the cognitive processes that happen in our brain are so important when learning a language. Memorization, repetition, when you decode information, all those processes are cognitive processes that happen in our brain. But let me tell you that emotional factors are as decisive in this process as cognitive ones, as Roldan says in his study in 2016. So let me tell you that you were not the only learner that used to feel in this way, that you didn't feel comfortable or confident enough to say the things. And that is an emotional factor from you that was interfering your learning process. And that is something normal. So you shouldn't have felt weird or less because you felt these emotions. In this video, I will explain mostly about anxiety and insecurity before participating in class or in the learning process. Diaz, in his study in 2014, says that anxiety is a factor that, if it occurs, can generate interference in the learning of a foreign language. And let's see how, in his study, he concluded the following information. None of the successful students presented high levels of anxiety in front of their class or when they used English. So, successful students that had a good performance in this study didn't have any level of anxiety. But on the other hand, the students that were not successful in using English had higher levels of anxiety. So it is noticeable how the anxiety interfered in their language learning. And then I have two studies when it happened almost the same. In the first, that says ansiedad ante el aprendizaje de una lengua extranjera, the students left the English courses because they didn't feel confident and they felt anxiety when they were going to participate in the class. La ansiedad ante el aprendizaje de una lengua extranjera is also another study that corroborates the fact that the emotional factors are as influential as the cognitive ones, since the conclusions stated that the students that had good cognitive skills but had anxiety or insecurity, they were not successful. But the students that had good cognitive skills but did not have any level of anxiety and insecurity, they were successful. Surya in her study in 2013, stated that the third reason why students didn't have a good performance in the process of learning English was because they had lack of confidence to use English because they were afraid of mistakes and shy feeling. And I don't know if you remember uh, some of your classmates at the beginning of the process that they left the courses because they didn't communicate, they were not able to communicate using the English because they were afraid of making mistakes, and they were probably good students but they felt afraid. It means that they had good cognitive skills but their emotional negative factors were interfering in the process of using the language. So that's something that affects the development of, or the performance of the students in the language learning of English. Now, Roldán in 2016 says that negative results sometimes emerge from the fact that students have not been trained to adequately handle negative emotions that arise from unpleasant experience during the English learning process, which is why such emotions become an obstacle in language acquisition. So in this case, it says that students do not learn from mistakes. Students, what usually do is that they, when they make mistakes, they feel afraid, so they leave the course or not continue learning English. In this case, my proposal is that teachers could be the support for the students. I am not saying that students should be trained in such a way that they can overcome this negative environment or this negative condition where they don't feel confident enough to participate. What I'm saying here, let's see some opinions from Roldan, 2016, and he says that teachers, English teachers and students should be trained in the handling of the resilient skill so the negative impact of emotions be diminished in the learning of language. But I disagree with him. What I would say is that, yeah, of course, students should be motivated to acquire a confidence whenever they make mistakes in language classrooms, because mistakes are always going to be present. But something else, and I consider most important that we English teachers should do, is that we have to use the emotional intelligence. But what is the emotional intelligence? Let's read a definition by Meyer and Salovey, 1997. And it says, Emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive emotions, to access and generate emotions so as to assist thought, to understand emotions and emotional knowledge, and to reflectively regulate emotions so as to promote emotional and intellectual growth. That's the answer for me. Teachers should be able to choose the right tools, the right resources to create an environment when classmates don't laugh about others' opinions, but an environment where the teacher and the classmates can support and help the learners that make mistakes to be more proficient, to not to see the mistakes as something negative and that is never going to be corrected, but learning by mistakes. So the teacher in this case could be the key for the students to be confident, to participate and give their opinions. So thank you so much. And remember, the infographic will be shared once the video is over.